Welcome to the NDA Virtual Industry Update and Award Celebration, sponsored by Volvo Construction Equipment. My name is Christopher Godek, current president of the National Demolition Association. Today's award ceremony will look quite a bit different than it has in the past, as we are sitting in my office and not somewhere in sunny New Orleans. This is due to the current pandemic situation, in case you hadn't noticed, and the unfortunate cancellation of Demolition New Orleans. While I'm saddened that we are not together in New Orleans, I am happy that we are together for the award ceremony. I feel that this was the best decision to make to protect the health and safety of all our attendees, exhibitors, vendors, members, and the community at large. So as they say in show business, the show must go on. I'd like to begin tonight by thanking Scott Laird. Scott is our NDA Convention Committee Chairman. It's been a difficult year for Scott. I know he and I have had a few phone calls, and I've asked him to switch gears. I've asked him to change the way he was doing things, and without a breath or a sigh, Scott said, "I'm on it. I'll take care of it." I don't think that we would have been able to even have this event without Scott's guidance with the convention committee. They took a multi-phase event, inside, outside exhibits at the exhibit hall in New Orleans, and they created an outdoor event. After they created an outdoor event, that wasn't enough, and we had to make the decision to cancel this year's event. So basically, this committee organized two events. So congratulations, Scott, on pulling the lucky straw this year. It was a pleasure to work with Scott. His go-and-get-itness and his ability to get the job done and be mission-focused was unparamounted. And I know whatever Scott sets his mind at will be a success. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention his committee. His committee as well worked very hard with Scott. And I know that they had ups and downs, and they had some stuff they had to figure out, and they were stellar at their job. I'd like to talk about a couple accomplishments this year. In 2020, our Government Affairs Committee is headed by Dennis McGarrell, and our staff liaison or coordinator is Kevin McKinney. And last year, we sent over 20 letters to the sitting presidential administration, Congress, and federal agencies advocating on the behalf of our industry so that we could ensure our companies could continue to work and be deemed essential. As you know, certain states have certain guidelines on what deemed a company essential, whereas I was able to work or continue working in Connecticut. A company in Michigan may not have been able to work or perform their work in Michigan. We at the NDA are always proud to advocate on the behalf of our members, and that's just what we did here. We felt that it was unfair to keep companies from working that wanted to keep working. And generally, most of us kept working. Most of us adapted to the situation and proved that we could do it safely and to keep our operations going. Some other items on the government affairs side, we secured essential services designation for our industry, which is really just me summing up what I just said before. We also weighed in on behalf of our members regarding tax incentives and payroll protection loan programs. We provided resources to help navigate these sometimes confusing and maze-like challenges to find these funds or to find these tax incentives. We opened a grassroots portal on the NDA website, allowing our members to comment directly on issues regarding the industry. I'd like to thank Dennis McGarrell, our government affairs chairman, his committee, as well as Kevin. Thank you all for your hard work this year. COVID-19 resources was another item. As the pandemic evolved and progressed throughout this past year, the NDA took it upon itself to make sure our members were informed of the issues and the updates of what was happening with COVID. In the beginning, there was a lot of rule changes and a lot of speculation, if you will, on how to handle things. There was a lot of guidelines coming out. I had a conversation with our executive board and Jeff, and one thing that we felt was very important for the NDA to do, and we kind of changed gears a little bit, was become a resource for information. So in our conversations, our biggest goal was to make sure the information that we sent out was succinct and spot on. We didn't want to overload everybody with too much information. Well, we wanted to make sure it was getting out there, and I think we did a fantastic job of that. I'm patting the NDA on the back, and I really think we did a great job. Some of the things that we were able to let people know were key updates on OSHA, Department of Labor, as well as legal considerations and business continuity. So hats off to the NDA on COVID-19 resources. This past year, the NDA formed a key alliance to OSHA. Finalization is imminent in April. What this means is this will allow us to have greater dialogue and collaboration with OSHA, stronger rapport with OSHA inspectors and regional and area offices to collaborate on demolition best work practices and safety, as well as developing materials and creating effective training aids that align with current regulations and proposed regulations. I think the easiest way to say this is once again, we'll have a seat at the table and we will be able to educate inspectors. But more importantly, we can help keep others safe. And I think this is one of the greatest things that we can do right now. And best demolition practices being reviewed annually with the group that tells us if we're safe or not, or has oversight on us, I think is an amazing thing. And I think that the only way that this came about was the hard work over the last 4 years, Washington fly-ins and that sort of thing, and the hard work of the Government Affairs Committee. This year, we have curated by the Industry Committee, which is a new committee, the Nda Resource Library. Started in 2020. It's an exciting new benefit for members. And basically what it is it's just that. It's a library. You can go there to learn, and you can go there to teach others. It features a series of newly developed white papers, scenarios, as well as forms and other information for use in the demolition industry. The real benefit of and strength of our library is the conducive and collaborative nature that it was created. I can put something in there and I can get information out of there. I think that collaboration is what's going to help us save lives in the future and raise the bar for our industry. Back last summer, the NDA participated in OSHA's COVID-19 safety stand down. This was something that happened across the trades, and we were proud to take part of it. Proud to let others know our take on safety, that our position is safety first every time. And we made sure that our membership had safety, COVID-19 safety talks that they were able to take to their crews, explain to their crews the safety and issues involved with COVID-19, document that, and help create a safer work environment for everybody involved. This year, we've also started the process of moving towards a uniform certification process for our industry. This is another step that the National Demolition Association is taking to raise the bar on worker safety and to limit workplace injury. Our committee has been formed and it's hard at work. I ask you to keep your eyes and ears open for the next bit of information regarding this, because this is something that we're going to be charging into full steam ahead. And I think it's going to be great for our industry. Finally, 2020 saw the collaboration and development of our brand new strategic plan for the NDA. This will guide the incoming president and executive board for the next 2 years. Places a special focus on ensuring safety in the workplace, as well as apprenticeship training, which in turn will help create a stronger, smarter, safer workforce for our industry. We look forward to putting this plan in action early this year. I can't wait to see what the things we get done. None of this excellent work could have been done without the support of the board of directors, 17, 18 individuals from different parts of the country with all differing views, economically, socially, fiscally, politically. But we were able to come together and work hard towards a common goal, and that's furthering our industry for our membership. I thank each and every one of you for the time that you put in. I'd like to especially thank a couple members that are leaving the board this year, Zach Clark, Mark Ferrari, Scott Knightley, Greg Menon, and Bill Moore. I think I speak for the rest of our board in our industry when I say thank you for the hard work and time that you've put into being a member of our board. In addition, I'd like to thank all of our committee members. Sorry about that. For dedicating your time to the NDA through an incredibly difficult year. Many of the accomplishments I mentioned could not have been possible without your efforts. I understand fully the place we were in early last year. It seemed like even though people were quarantined and isolated, it always seemed like there was something else you had to do. I mean, I found myself cleaning bananas when I got home, but it always seemed like there wasn't enough time. And I know that sometimes signing into a Zoom call or getting on a conference call was the last thing you wanted to think about. But I know that your commitment to the industry was paramount. And I want to say thank you to you and everyone for their time and effort in this volunteer organization, because I know it wasn't easy and I know what it takes. And I'm just going to say thank you again. It is greatly appreciated by everybody. I'd also like to thank our diligent and hardworking staff. A lot of the things that happen at the NDA or on a Zoom call or a LinkedIn post or a Facebook post, But to really see the last few years, what happens behind the scenes is pretty amazing. And it's pretty amazing that the group that we have at Smith Buckland, when they say they care about the NDA and the NDA is a great concern for them, you better believe it, because it really is. You know, our team is top notch. Natalie DeHart, Eric DeVos, Kenny Broadbeck, Linda Bank, Alexa Schlosser, Jane Corso, and Kevin McKinney with Government Affairs. Every one of them's worked their tails off for us this year. And I know that it wasn't easy for them as well, working from home. And especially, last but not least, I'd like to especially thank Jeff Lambert for his guidance over the last 2 years. His guidance to me and the executive board has been unwavering and spot on. So as my time as president gets close to an end, I'd like to honor and welcome Scott Homrich as the new president of the NDA. Scott is the CEO of Homrich Companies, serving as his company's visionary leader. He heads up the marketing, estimating, sales of Homrich Companies, and he's involved in tracking the trends in demolition, emerging markets, and guiding his company through market changes and economical shifts. Scott has nearly 30 years in the environmental and remediation business, and he's got a long resume of work on the NDA, Education Committee Chairman, Awards Committee Chairman. I think he was a past committee chair, which, by the way, is a prerequisite to being a president. Anyway, so something that Scott reminds me of often. But anyway, I'm thrilled to welcome Scott as our next president. So I'd like to just say a couple more words in closing. I'd like to thank my family. You know, there is a lot of work goes into being president. It's mainly time, and it's time I could have spent with my family, but their understanding of my desire and my wish to help further our industry, I couldn't ask for a more understanding family. I love them very much. I'd also like to thank my company and my employees whose perseverance and diligent work has enabled me to take the time that's needed to help with the NDA and to be on board for the last 8 years on the executive committee, with the last 2 as president. And, you know, them and my family, both very, very special to me, most important thing in the world to me. And I thank them all from the bottom of my heart. So, you know, this will probably be the last time I talk to you as president of the NDA. And if I could say one thing, it's the message that I've said before, that, you know, we all have to take care of each other. And sometimes we see a gift and we don't recognize it for a gift, but it really is there. So take care, be safe, see you soon.
Thank you for the great introduction, Chris. It has been a pleasure watching you lead our association in your term as president. And as we all know, this last year was one of the craziest times any of us have experienced. With that, you did what best-in-class demolition contractors do. You adapted and found a way to keep the association moving forward. You can rest assured that I will be working to make sure that the association continues making way. Thank you for your service, Chris. As we now move into my term as president, I look forward to your guidance and support as we continue to keep the momentum going, even if it is under new operating guidelines that seem to be changing all the time. And thank you to the rest of the executive board, the board of directors, and the general membership. I'm grateful you have put your faith in me to be your association president. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago when I was attending the board meetings as a young boy with my dad, while my dad was president of this great association. In fact, with me now being president, it makes my father and I the first father-son presidents in our association's history. It is truly a great honor. I'd be remiss if I also didn't thank my lovely bride, Kelly, and our 3 wonderful kids who support me in more ways than I could mention. Thank you to them. And last but not least, I want to thank my entire team at Homrich, and most importantly, my brother, Tim. They're the ones working safe every day and keeping Homrich a best-in-class demolition company. Becoming president of this association is something that I have looked forward to for many years. Having been involved with the association since I was a little kid, I've grown up in this organization. And I have faith that we are continuing to head in the right direction. Before I was elected to the executive board, I was chairman of the education committee. As the chair, we were able to implement the first course in our Foundations of Demolition training series. We now have 4 courses that we built from the ground up, with more being worked on by the education committee. Even in the year of COVID, the education committee converted the in-person estimating and risk management courses into virtual courses to keep striving to our goals in tough times. Safety and education are 2 of our core values. We have come a long ways in building both of these areas, but there's still plenty of work to do. We have now taken the next step in our long-term strategic plan and began creating a certification board that will begin to lay the groundwork to produce a full program, including exams. The strategic goal of the certification program is to be the gold standard source for personal certification, standardizing best practices, education, and information across the industry. Just this past January, in conjunction with our leadership forum, we completed another round of strategic planning to help focus in on the goals or KPIs that the committees will be working towards in the coming years. I was part of our first strategic planning meeting many years ago in Dedham, and these forward-thinking sessions allow the board to look into the future and also set short-term goals to make sure the committees are focused on tasks that align with our mission. I look forward to working with the committee chairs, the board of directors, and the rest of the executive board as we continue making way to a safer and more educated demolition industry. Unfortunately, we weren't able to cruise and mingle in the exhibit hall or the live demo area this year, but if any of the members have any questions, please feel to reach out to me at any time. And once again, thank you all for the opportunity. I look forward to the years ahead.
Good afternoon and good morning to all NDA members joining us from across the US and Canada. I'm Dr. Ray Gallant, Vice President of Product Management and Productivity with Volvo Construction Equipment. The demolition industry is a close community that is like a family to Volvo. We have spent decades listening to you and designing equipment that is purpose-built for your work environments. We keep your safety, productivity, and profitability top of mind always. These factors are more important today than ever before, as we will hear from our keynote speaker today, Mr. Ken Simonson. Ken is Chief Economist for the Associated General Contractors of America, the leading trade association for the construction industry. He has more than 40 years' experience analyzing, advocating, and communicating about economic and tax issues. Among his outside activities, he advises the U.S. Census Bureau on overhauling its construction data. He is a fellow and past president of the National Association for Business Economics, and he is co-director of the Tax Economists Forum, a professional meeting group he co-founded in 1982. Ken has a BA in economics from the University of Chicago and a master's in economics from Northwestern University. And now, please join me in welcoming Ken.
Well, thank you, and it's good to be with you, at least virtually. I hope that we can get together in person the next time. I want to show you a set of slides that shows, first of all, what AGC members have been experiencing and expecting, and then what the government data shows us about the overall industry. You may know that AGC has over 27,000 member companies. They belong through a network of 88 chapters that blanket the country from Alaska to South Florida and Puerto Rico, and from Maine to San Diego and Hawaii. And I hope many of you are either members or involved with your local AGC chapter. Our members do every kind of construction other than single-family home building, and also include the full range of suppliers and service providers to the construction industry. We've been fortunate in being able to tap that network repeatedly over the last year to find out how the pandemic has affected them. And the first slide, which I hope is showing up on your screens, shows that 3/4 of the respondents in our annual Outlook survey, which we released on January 7th, said that they had had a project postponed or canceled. In contrast, only 1/4 said that they had won an additional project or an addition to an existing project. We also copied a question that the Census Bureau has been asking many firms every week now. When do you expect the volume of business to match or exceed year-ago levels? And this broke evenly between 1/3 saying that business was already back to year-ago levels or exceeding it, and 1/3 saying, no, it's going to take more than 6 months to get there. Well, I'll show you a few more results later on, but let me get to the broader picture. This shows the Bureau of Labor Statistics employment figures, and we'll be getting February numbers tomorrow morning. What you see on the left is the tremendous drop in employment that happened in construction as well as the overall economy from February and especially from March until April. The construction industry lost 15% of its employees, 1.1 million workers in just 2 months. That was half as many as the entire 5-year period from 2006 to 2011. The industry recouped very quickly. By May, thanks in part to the ending of stop work orders issued either by owners or by governors and some mayors, but also to quick adoption of those Paycheck Protection Program loans, contractors were able to recall workers who had been furloughed, and construction employment bounced back strongly in May. But after that, things started to go in 2 different directions. What I've called residential construction consists of home builders and general building contractors who specialize in multifamily work, as well as the specialty trade contractors who are doing both new additions and renovations. And all of those aspects of the residential market have really taken off and are continuing to grow strongly. So by December, residential construction employment had actually gotten back to its pre-pandemic peak in February of 2020. In contrast, non-residential construction employment stalled and in the last half of the year just moved up fitfully. Here's how it looks state by state. Huge variation. At the high end, Alabama, Utah, South Dakota were all about 6% ahead of the February level as of December. The US as a whole, construction employment was still down 3%. And at the low end, Vermont was 23% below its February level, and several other states were at or near double-digit losses in construction employment. In fact, only 15 states and DC were ahead of the February level. Another series that I look at each month is from the Census Bureau. It's called Value Put in Place, or the amount spent on construction projects underway in a given month. And some of you may be familiar with numbers from Dodge Data and Analytics or Construct Connect. They look at a project and put the whole value into their database the month they deem it to have started. Census Bureau, as the name Value Put in Place suggests, they're only trying to measure how much was spent in a given month. So this series fluctuates somewhat less, but it nevertheless shows some very extreme differences. Total construction spending from February to December was up a hefty 6%. But as soon as you start peeling back the layers of that onion, you see some big differences. Private residential construction boomed, up 21%. And that was almost equally divided between single and multifamily and improvements, additions, and renovations. Private non-residential spending tumbled by 10% in just 10 months. And public construction was still up 3%. But I think this reflects that very long lag on many public works projects. And as those finish up, I think we'll be seeing fewer project awards and therefore less growth and perhaps a decline in the public spending. Well, let me peel back another layer and take you through the different non-residential segments. Here I've combined the public and private into a single figure, and I'm comparing January 2021 to January 2020. And I'm sorry, the top line was also that year-over-year comparison, not a 10-month comparison. So power construction, and this shows some of the ways the census has its unique definitions, they include every form of electric power generation, including renewables like wind and solar, transmission, local distribution, but then they add in the construction that takes place around drilling sites and on pipelines. And you can see both of these figures were down sharply over the last 12-month period. I think going forward, with the Biden administration and with many states pushing renewable energy and moving away from oil and gas, we will see even less construction of pipelines and around drilling sites. Should see some increase coming on this year and certainly after this year in solar, wind, maybe offshore wind, battery storage, and battery charging stations. Highway and street construction has fluctuated in this particular 12-month period. It's up pretty sharply. Clearly, states saw a big drop off in gas and diesel tax revenues in the first months of the pandemic. Those are still generally trailing year-ago levels, but so far the DOTs have been able to avoid most cuts in bid lettings. So I'm optimistic that this figure will remain roughly at year-ago levels, if not higher. Education shows how some of these categories are really showing a split personality. Primary and secondary school construction, and this includes reconstruction and additions, up 7% in the last year, whereas spending on higher ed facilities down 14%. Even though not all schools are open yet, school districts have been busy upgrading their HVAC systems and creating more spacing within the buildings, putting some temporary classrooms outside. And so I think this kind of activity will keep rising. In addition, as we see home building spread to new areas, new schools will also be built to accommodate those populations. But for higher ed, there's been a tremendous loss of tuition revenue, student fees, and in some places, student athletic revenue, and big questions about how many students are going to come back to campus, should come back. So a big drop in spending on new dorms, classrooms, and other facilities that is just likely to intensify for a while. Office construction, another one of those categories that has a joker in the deck. In this case, it includes data centers. Now, I think of an office as a place where people work, not just electrons, but this classification dates from long before anybody had the term data center. And from what we hear, data centers continue to be a very active and growing market. It also includes office remodeling and renovation, and that seems to be proceeding in many areas. So if this were just looking at new office construction, I think the number would be much more negative and likely to stay that way, at least through 2021. Commercial is a term that gets used in a lot of different ways. For census, they cover about a dozen kinds of retail construction, warehouse, and farm. And the warehouse figure up only modestly. I think that will do even better this year. We're certainly seeing a lot of these so-called last mile or last hour distribution points close to residences. Also more investment in cold storage facilities and in big fulfillment centers at or just off airport properties. And retail, while we've seen a growth in retail sales, most chains are cutting back or not in a position to do new construction. So I think this will continue to decline. Manufacturing has been in steep decline through this period, but I think in 2021 we'll see selective improvements, more food production facilities aimed at getting products to consumers rather than to stores and institutions, restaurants, more investment in, if not cars and aircraft, at least equipment that goes into them, particularly for electric and self-guided vehicles. Transportation covers a host of modes and also a mix of public and private spending. Airport construction was closely balanced last year between airports that were able to speed up projects because they didn't have the clutter of airplanes and passengers on the property, but other airports that have canceled major expansions because they don't see the need to add gates at a time when passenger traffic is down so much. The small freight rail and trucking category may do better this year. We've certainly seen huge growth in demand for both types of service. And then mass transit is one of those legacy programs where you had projects that started years before the pandemic that are still building out. But I think there will be fewer mass transit starts in the next year or two. Healthcare is, again, a mixed category. Hospitals last year suffered huge revenue losses when they had to cancel elective surgery and people going into emergency rooms, if not with COVID. And people are continuing to stay away from hospitals and certainly stay away from nursing homes. At the same time, they do need treatment. And so I think we will see an evolution of new kinds of healthcare facilities that census lumps into this special care category. Finally, not one of the top categories, but notable because it had the steepest decline, lodging construction. And that is still in decline, and I think it will be for some time. Another data series that I look at every month is producer price indexes. Generally, these measure the selling price at a producer level, a manufacturer or a distributor. But there's a special kind of index that I call the bid price index. The Bureau of Labor Statistics gives it the formal name, the producer price index for new non-residential building construction. Under either name, you can see it's been dead flat since April. Contractors just are not raising their bids. At the same time, they're having to absorb tremendous cost increases for materials and services. So the umbrella index that gives a weighted average to all of those purchases by contractors has gone up at a rate of more than 1% a month for 9 straight months now, up 10.5% for both residential and non-residential construction. Here are some of the major culprits. Most of all, softwood lumber, more broadly, the lumber, plywood, oriented strand board categories, and prefab trusses. But copper also has been rising sharply. And then steel, which at first had a big price drop, has started going up. And in fact, these prices only reflect what producers were charging as of mid-January. Next Friday, a week from tomorrow, we'll get figures for February. But even since then, we've continued to see record prices set for many kinds of lumber and steel products. And I think that we're going to continue to see this bind on contractors being hit with more material price increases, but because of the increase in canceled projects and lack of new projects, intensified competition, forcing them to hold down their bid prices. So to summarize what we've seen so far, huge job loss in just 2 months, stronger rebound than for the overall economy, but increasing divergence between residential construction employment, which has gotten back to February levels, non-residential has practically stalled at barely half of the jobs lost being recouped. PPP loans certainly helped last year. They're available again, but contractors aren't likely to apply for them if they don't have new work to do. Here's what our members told us they would get more work to do in 2020. Only 3 of the 16 categories that we asked about got more expectation of higher volume of work available to bid on than lower. Those were what we called other healthcare, clinics, testing and screening facilities, medical labs, warehouse construction, and somewhat to a surprise to me, water and sewer construction, slightly positive reading. Hospital, slightly negative, but from there it gets steeply negative. Worst of all, retail, lodging, and private office construction, but also quite a negative outlook for higher education, public building, and even K through 12 schools. Our members said that 2/3 of them said projects took longer than anticipated. More than half said costs have been higher than anticipated, but that intensified competition meant that only 1/3 of them put higher prices into bids or contracts. Now, contractors are always optimists. We've been asking for 10 years what their expectations were for their headcount in the coming year. And this time they still, on net, 1/3 said they expected to increase headcount at their own firm. Only 1/4 said that they expected to decrease. But that is far less positive than in past years, when typically 3/4 of the firms would say, oh, we're going to add employees, and only a handful said we expect to shrink. With so many people unemployed, you might think it would be easier to find workers, but only 1 out of 5 firms said that it was easy or they expected it to be easier. And nearly half said that it's hard to hire or it's getting harder. And I think that reflects the mismatch between people who have been laid off and the skills and locations where jobs are needed, but also the fact that many people who are out of work can't come back. They either have COVID, they're taking care of family members who have it, or family members who aren't able to go to school or to daycare, or they're afraid of being exposed to COVID on the job site and may not have had the chance to get vaccinated, particularly since most of those workers would be under 65. Well, how will things play out from now? We are on our way to getting more and more people vaccinated, but until we have a large enough population vaccinated and comfortable with going back to offices, to sending their kids to school, going to restaurants, to entertainment and sporting events, I think that the economy is still going to limp along. Even when it's back to more or less full capacity, full growth mode, the construction is going to lag. Owners, whether they are businesses building for their own account, investors and lenders and developers, institutions such as universities, or state and local government agencies, they've all seen tremendous revenue losses and at best diminished prospects for needing new facilities, and maybe at worst, they're out of business. So by and large, construction is going to have a tough year. There will be some hot spots, certainly remodeling of all kinds of facilities, local distribution centers and other kinds of warehouses, data centers, and selected parts of the manufacturing and healthcare. But a good deal less demand than previously for retail, offices, higher ed, lodging, travel-related things like airports, car rental agencies, convention centers. And for now, less demand for sports and cultural facilities. Eventually, we'll get past this, and the US economy is still fundamentally strong, but there have been some changes that I think are permanent. Population growth has slowed down greatly in the last decade, and I'll show you on the next slide where that has intensified. And that means slower growth of demand for many kinds of construction, certainly for housing, but also for related infrastructure, for local retail, for public safety and other public facilities, and also slower growth in revenue for the state and local agencies, particularly local agencies, to pay for those structures. The shift from retail to e-commerce that started before the pandemic certainly intensified, and so that shift from retail structures to e-commerce and distribution structures will also continue, but the nature of those buildings will shift as we get more autonomous vehicles delivering to them and perhaps to end customers, maybe more drones. And inside the building, much more automation will allow structures to go much higher, but on a smaller footprint. Healthcare facilities, we have a continually aging population, and unfortunately, maybe many more people with lingering symptoms from COVID. So they will need treatment, but it will be outside of hospitals and as much as they can, staying outside of nursing homes. So expect to see new types of healthcare facilities evolve. For now, people are as eager, if not more so, to get their kids back into school, but that shrinking rate of population growth is showing up in fewer births. And so demand for K through 12 schools, while it's being helped by new construction outside of existing school catchment areas, is gradually going to slow down. In terms of where we'll spend our time and money, certainly I think people will be eager to go to restaurants again. They may not have the same owners, but restaurants are still going to be a growth category, much more so than hotels, stores, or offices. Where will people be living? This map shows the Census Bureau's annual report on population change by state. This is not based on the 2020 census. We probably won't see those results for another 6 weeks or so. But this shows that as of July 1st of last year, US population growth slowed to just 1/3%, the slowest rate since the Great Depression. And a record 16 states lost population. The states in pink had very slow population growth, less than 0.5%. Instead, population growth was concentrated in the states in light green, 1 to just under 1.5%, and only 3 states grew at a rate of 1.5% or more. Idaho was the leader for the third time in 4 years with a 2.1% growth rate, followed by Arizona, Nevada, and then Utah. And a large part of that growth came from those West Coast states, particularly California, which lost population for the first time in its history. And I think these trends will generally continue. In fact, in 2021, we may actually see national population growth stall for a year before hopefully picking up again if we get the death rate down, get more immigration. Well, let me stop there for now and see if there are any questions. But I'd also invite you to email me at ken.simonson@agc.org if there are questions that occur to you after this session, or if you want to subscribe to the Data Digest. That's my weekly one-page summary of economic news relevant to construction. And we have a lot of other materials at agc.org. So let me turn it over to you, Tony.
Yeah, hey, great job, Ken. There's a couple questions came in already, and I'll go ahead and read those off to you. Jim asks, as it relates to the demolition industry, office remodeling lends itself to select demolition revenues that would benefit our membership. Is the current conventional thought that many companies that will not reoccupy their office space lend to a conversion of office space to new use, like multifamily?
Yeah, I'm hearing that question a lot. And as I think about the stock of office buildings and where they're located, it seems to me very few of them are suitable for conversion to residential space. The building that AGC of America is located in, it's a 7-story modern building. It was put up finished, I think, in 2006. Sealed windows, core with gang bathrooms and multiple elevators. Just not easy to convert to the kinds of facilities that most people would want to have for an apartment. Now, that's probably not the prime suspect for conversion. Older office buildings with windows that open, particularly if they have a narrower footprint, so you can run a central corridor and have apartments on both sides that all have access to or window space. Yes, you may see some of that, but then you have to consider, what is the neighborhood like? Is this where people are still going to want to live at a time where we're seeing the population move out of central cities, farther out? It's quite a change from what was happening as recently as 2018 or even 2019, when cities, and particularly older and transit accessible suburbs, ones with mixed use within walking distance, that those were the place to be. So right now, I think we're in for some building conversions, but more of it would be big box stores, anchor stores in malls being converted to some kind of distribution center, or perhaps hybrid retail and distribution. I think a lot of office space is going to hang around vacant rather than being demolished or successfully converted. And if we do see conversions, some of that may be more among hotels, where again, you have individual rooms already plumbed for private bathrooms. So to the extent you can turn those into studio apartments, or you already have connecting doors between pairs of rooms, it's easier to make that into an apartment. And of course, some hotel rooms already have at least limited kitchen facilities. So those conversions would be easier, and there's going to be perhaps an even bigger overhang of hotel space than there is of office space. But again, as with everything in real estate, it's location times 3, and also what would it take to build new versus to convert an existing space. Finally, people wonder, well, are we going to see more spending on renovation than on demolition and replacement? And that, I think, also depends on how hot a neighborhood or a metro area or a submarket is. With people moving into being able to work remotely, get more things delivered to home, I think that there is less demand now for reuse of those already occupied, already built on spaces. And so we may see buildings left vacant for a longer time than you would have expected a few years ago.
Yeah, really good point there. It's hard to argue with the logic, but I think all of us want to see more opportunities for business, especially based on what you said that the industry's slowing down a bit. So another question came in. It says, you indicated that non-residential construction bid prices have been stagnant since April 2020. Do you see any signs of when this will begin moving again?
Well, as a representative of the Construction Association, I never predict what contractors will be charging, let alone try to recommend it to them. But let me go back to the previous recession, which, as I mentioned, lasted for 5 years for construction, from the collapse of single-family home building and also of the condo market in 2006. Non-residential construction kept going until the financial crisis hit in 2008, and public construction actually kept going for about a year after that. But then they were all on a downslope until late 2010, early 2011. So in that 2008 to 2011 period, there was tremendous pressure on contractors to generate cash flow any way they could, and they generally held the line, or in fact, in many cases, they were cutting their bids. Public agencies that had been complaining from 2004 to 2008, we can't even get enough bidders to award a contract, or the bids are coming in 30% more than our estimators told us to expect. All of a sudden, there were 20 bidders for a school project that had only gotten 2, and the bids were almost as far below the estimators' estimates as they had been above. And yet materials costs were much more stable or even rising in some of those periods. So I think if what we see going forward, and I'm not predicting a 5-year turn down, fortunately, we've had an incredibly fast bounce back in parts of the economy. So I do think that even construction will be able to grow again well before 5 years. But I think that for now, we are at a period where intensifying competition to generate some cash flow may keep that bid price index flat for even in the face of these rising materials costs. And frankly, that means hardship for a lot of contractors, particularly ones that are thinly capitalized. And we did see firms go out of business in the past recession, so that could happen again.
Great. So Ken, I've got quite a number of questions coming in, and not sure of your timing for your presentation. Did you have more to present before, or should I go ahead and continue with questions?
Go for it. I can stay on as long as the scheduled session lasts.
All right. What do you foresee in terms of a U.S. infrastructure investment program moving forward with earnest to address highway, water, and even electrical grid construction activity? Will the Texas problem help to drive this?
That's a good question, and one that I can't answer with any confidence at this time. Let me lay out what I see happening in Washington. The Biden administration initially the president was expected to give a State of the Union address a week ago, and then lay out his vision for infrastructure either at that time or shortly thereafter, perhaps by now. But instead, the priority is getting that recovery bill through Congress. The Senate may vote as early as tonight. And so the president has put off the State of the Union until he gets that resolved. And with it is a plan for growth supported by infrastructure. Now, the House a year ago passed a very broad-based, large infrastructure bill. The Senate never even took it up. The Senate, one of the Senate committees with jurisdiction over highways and transit, or the highway piece, back in 2019, had done its work, but again, it didn't get through the rest of the committees. So things are wide open as to what we would see going forward. Clearly, the president loves Amtrak. He is likely to recommend a good deal of money for boosting intercity rail and in particular the Gateway project between New Jersey and New York. We do expect renewal at some level of the FAST Act, the highway and transit funding bill that was on the verge of expiring last September. It was renewed for 1 year, so Congress has to get back to that by September 30th. It looks like the president would propose and the House would go along with a lot of money for broadband internet, for battery charging stations, for battery storage development. I think the widespread power failures in Texas probably do add to the urgency and the support in Congress for getting that done. But it's still going to be a real needle threading problem to get something through the Senate. And so some of these things may be jettisoned or scaled back by the time a bill gets to the president's desk. And I don't expect that to happen before September 30th or very closely before that. But realistically, there are likely to be a few short-term extensions even beyond that date. So October or November might be the most likely time to see an infrastructure bill. And then, of course, there will be a lag when the money has to get distributed to states, local governments, private developers made eligible, depending how these things are structured, and then project awards and actual construction or demolition. So I don't think we're going to see much change from legislation actually hit the bottom line of contractors, including demolition firms, until sometime in 2022.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you have any idea of how scrap materials, metals specifically, will be affected going forward? Also, will recycling be affected with regards to the industry?
Scrap is one of many areas that has been affected by the huge downs and back up of the pandemic, that so many businesses shut down, so many canceled orders, and consumers pulled back in that March and April period, that it really caused disruption to the flow of scrap, particularly scrap iron and steel heading to mini mills. And we're still seeing the consequences of that in terms of now record prices for a number of steel products and very long, very uncertain delivery dates. So I think that scrap will gradually get back on track, but it's going to be really dependent on, in part, on whether the auto industry is able to continue ramping back up. And they've been stymied by another supply chain problem, not getting enough electronic components, chips in particular. So I think the message is expect the unexpected. Prices are going to remain volatile. You're going to have sudden problems in areas you may not have expected. For instance, a lack of resins because of hurricanes forcing shutdowns of petrochemical plants last August and September in Texas. Lack of resins has affected a number of plastics businesses and even coatings for some metals. So recycling and scrap both are going to be in for a lot of volatility.
Okay, good. So last question. If the second stimulus gains enough momentum to pass the Senate, is it anticipated that this will stimulate infrastructure, highways and bridges that may support the demolition industry?
Yes, I think that this time around, I'm thankful that the last time Congress did pass a stimulus bill known as the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act so quickly that President Obama signed it on February 17th, 2009, just 4 weeks after taking office. This one is on a slower track, and they've broken off infrastructure from that single bill, so much slower track for that. But I think one of the flaws of going fast was that there was this huge emphasis on so-called shovel-ready work, which too often meant that the highway money went for repaving, or in DC where I live, even for sidewalks. I think this time around, the money that goes for highway-related infrastructure, much more of it will be to modernize and add the capacity to existing highways. So that would mean rebuilding interchanges, bridges, and so forth. And so clearly that is supportive of major demolition work before you can expand or replace.
That's what we like to hear, Ken. Thanks. I don't see any other questions, so either we can move on to the rest of your presentation, or if this is it, then
That's it. Let me just reiterate, people are welcome to get my data digest or ask me further questions by emailing me at ken.simonson@agc.org. And thanks for having me today.
great job, Ken. Thank you.
Thank you to Ken Simonson for the excellent keynote presentation. As NDA's new president, it is my honor to kick off the awards portion of the NDA Virtual Industry Update and Awards Celebration, which would not be possible without the generous support of our partner and event sponsor, Volvo. We thank Volvo for their support of this event, NDA, and the demolition industry. With our community spread apart, recognizing accomplishments and innovation in demolition is the perfect way to connect with one another. In 2020, this recognition feels more important than ever, so I am thrilled to now turn it over to Richard Adamo, Chair of the NDA Awards Committee, for presentation of this year's awards.
Hello, I am Richard Adamo, Chairman of the NDA Awards Committee. I am very proud of the NDA community for joining together during this unprecedented year to celebrate great accomplishments and recognize individuals for their hard work. I would also like to take this time to thank my fellow committee members and NDA staff for all their hard work put forth gathering the information needed to evaluate each category. The work that we accomplish each year is vital to the communities we serve, and 2020 was no exception. Through a global crisis, we were able to keep our industry strong and support those impacted most by the pandemic. I'm encouraged by the collaboration and innovation displayed by our member organizations, and I'm happy to celebrate your accomplishments with much deserved awards. I have invited a few NDA committee members to help me recognize 2021 award winners. You will also hear from the Education Committee Chair, Steve Schwartz, as he presents the certificates of demolition management, and our new president, Scott Homrich, who will present our prestigious individual awards. The first awards are the scholarship recipients. Each year, the NDA Awards Committee grants 11 scholarships to deserving demolition professionals and their family members. Each scholarship supports career advancement for up-and-coming professionals through continuing education opportunities. We are proud to introduce a new scholarship being awarded this year in honor of our dear friend, Michael Cazmon. NDA would like to offer our deepest gratitude to Michael's family, particularly his wife, Ann, for their generous contribution to help make this scholarship possible. From your entire NDA family, we thank you. Our committee read through 35 applications, and this year's recipients are truly accomplished and will do great things as they start the next journey in their lives. Please help me congratulate the 2021 scholarship recipients. I would also like to encourage everyone to visit the NDA website to make a donation to support the NDA scholarships program. The second award is the Michael Cazmon Award. Developed in 2020, the Michael Cazmon Safety Award celebrates Mike Cazmon's legacy, who was instrumental in the development of the NDA's Foundations of Demolition Management Education Series, and posthumously received the NDA's Hall of Fame Award in 2019. This award honors companies that prioritize safety on every job site. Based on a 28-point scoring system, evaluating work-related injuries or illnesses, the Michael Cazmon Safety Award recognizes 4 outstanding companies in categories based on man hours per year. Congratulations to these companies for their significant accomplishments. The final award is the award in Excellence in Demolition. The Excellence in Demolition Award are NDA's most prestigious awards, recognizing demolition companies who have demonstrated significant achievement in the completion of a unique demolition project over the past year. This year, objective measures such as the expected versus actual budget, completion time, and man hours were incorporated into the scoring process. The impacts of COVID-19 were felt industry-wide, but the work did not stop. Instead, these challenges fueled innovative thinking and collaboration to create successful projects for our clients and overall community. Congratulations to our 3 award winners.
Since the inception of the Foundation's Demolition Management Training Series, we have had 42 individuals complete all 4 courses and earned a Certificate of Demolition Management. On behalf of the Education Committee, we are encouraged by the growth of this certificate program and see the commitment to education as an important step to advancing our profession and industry. We will continue to offer all 4 courses of the training series in 2021, including the Foundations of Demolition Risk Management course at the World of Concrete this June. I am grateful to those individuals who have persevered and prioritized education during a year of such uncertainty. In 2020, we converted our estimating and risk management in-person courses into virtual learning opportunities. Although the courses looked and felt a bit different, our focus on expertise, skill, and best practices was always prevalent in the classroom. We were happy to welcome over 60 virtual attendees across the 2 course offerings. I'm proud to congratulate the 7 individuals who have earned their Certificate of Demolition Management in 2020. The NDA is thrilled to offer all 4 Foundations of Demolition Management courses in 2021. Earn your Certificate of Demolition Management by attending each of the following courses: Project Management, Job Cost Tracking, Risk Management, and Estimating. Visit the NDA website to learn more about the Foundations of Demolition Management program and for dates on upcoming courses.
I am honored to present NDA's individual awards. The Hall of Fame program honors elite industry leaders whose commitment, ingenuity, and devotion have significantly impacted the demolition industry and our members' companies. The men and women who enter our Hall of Fame have led extraordinary careers whom we all emulate. This year's recipients represent a range of expertise in the field, I am honored to recognize our 2021 inductees. The Lifetime Achievement Award honors leadership and commitment to NDA's organizational vision and mission, and pays tribute to the individual's commitment to the betterment of their community, their company, and the demolition industry as a whole. This year's recipient, Herbert T Duane Jr, is an exemplar in our industry and has been a longtime supporter of our association. Many in the demolition community consider Herbert Duane to be a mentor. His experience and guidance has had a great impact on many of us. I am honored to recognize Herbert's extraordinary career with the 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations again to all of the 2021 award winners. Although we wish we could recognize your accomplishments in person, we are grateful for your contributions to the industry and your dedication to NDA. I look forward to serving as your president, and I hope to see everyone in person for Demolition 22. Next year, we will be traveling to San Diego, California, February 26th through March 1st. Thank you for joining us on this virtual environment, and I will see you all in California next year.